Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Nora from Nora Healings, and in this video actually I just want to share my experiences that I've had on my recent trip to Egypt. So this video is just going to be all about that, and I will not share all the activities that we did. We stayed there from June 11th until June 19th. But I will just share the activities and impressions that just stick with me the most and that I think I will not forget the rest of my life. Um, so I met up there with a friend of mine who is from the United States, and he just happened to be on travels anyway. So he was in the area of Thailand and Bali and Vietnam, and it was just like perfect divine timing for us to meet in Egypt as he was about to return to the United States right about the time when I wanted to go to Egypt. And so it was basically like, hey, let's meet up in Egypt, spend a couple of days there, and then he can continue his trip to the United States. So that was really, really cool. His name is Matt Adams, and he also works with energy. He's highly, highly intuitive, very empathic, very sensitive. And so that made it even more interesting, just also, to finally meet in person, because so far we have only had contact over Zoom and, the smartphone and stuff. So that was it was amazing. It was so great. He arrived there a couple hours before me, and that was like the first surprise was the place where we stayed at. I booked the place ahead of time, and we just didn't expect the area to be that way because we actually found ourselves in the slums of Cairo. And we stayed in this area for the whole time. It is like the area, I would say, I think it's eastern. Yeah, it's on the east side of the pyramids, so it's basically like behind what usually people get to see. And there's just so much poverty there. People live in ruins. Like they have a hard time to sustain a life for themselves. And it's also the area where you find the working animals for the pyramids. So every camel, every horse you see at the pyramids, be shown to the tourists and offered for rides. This is where they live. And so there was also just this constant smell of, horse poop and camels in the air. And so it wasn't like the nice touristic surface level thing that people might see in Egypt when they get there. And so that was a surprise. At first, we weren't sure if we were going to feel safe and comfortable in that place. The apartment was beautiful, and also the location actually, like with that view on the pyramids, it's so close to the pyramids that we could have walked 15 minutes and we would have been at the base of the Great Pyramid. So that's how close we are. It could be absolutely beautiful. It's just that the neighborhood doesn't really feel very safe to, just walk around as a tourist on your own. But we had the greatest host that one can imagine, and he was like really making us feel safe. And sometimes he even came with us as a guide on our trips. And I could tell that he is also pretty sensitive and just, aware energetically. Maybe, not super highly active, but he does perceive things and he is interested in just the energetic aspect of things. So in the end, actually, I fell in love with that place, and I would not want to visit any other place or stay in a fancy hotel. When I return to Cairo, instead, it's like, this is the true, raw, real, authentic Egypt that one gets to experience when you live with the locals. It's totally different. And I have to say, the food was amazing. I have been in Egypt once before, but not in Cairo. And the place we stayed at was just this fancy hotel with, the food was okay, but it was just this hotel food that isn't actually the authentic Arab kitchen, but we got to eat really, really good. So there's it can't be compared to what people get in hotels. It was actually really delicious, and just like the fruit there, and I really, really enjoyed it and I loved it. And I personally would absolutely recommend this place, especially if you are interested in like experience the real Egypt. It might be a little bit, I would say emotionally, energetically challenging, but at least for me, it was also a little bit of a, it helped me to build a little bit of resilience as well. Before that experience, I was the type of person that, if I get to a place that is crowded or just where it's like really negative energy, I usually have the impulse to get out of there. But in this case, I was just, well, I wasn't actually stuck there, but I mean, the place we lived for these couple of days was where it was, and these were the energies there, and it was just like I was just being exposed to it constantly. And I feel like it did make me stronger in that regard. So, yeah, let's begin like with the first trip experience that I will definitely remember, that had me very impressed just with the effects and impressions I had. And basically all of what I share is just like is my experience and my impression. It's subjective. It's not that I have like read a lot of Egyptology or the history overall. It's and even like the guides that were providing us a lot of explanations and information, sometimes it was just like an overload and I didn't really absorb what they said because there were just like too many impressions at once, and I was just busy sort of experiencing the moment and the place and whatever else comes in and comes through. So yeah, all I share is just like the way I perceived it. So the first day we had quite a tight schedule. We began by actually having a trip at the pyramids and Saqqara. So that's basically like the desert region near the pyramids, where there are other types of older pyramids as well. Some of them are tombs for old kings, and there's also one stepped pyramid. Yeah, I will tell you about that later. That one was pretty trippy, but so we were there with our guide, and he started to show us around, and it was just really, really impressive to stand in front of these structures and just like feel the energy. It was pretty hot, and it's not like you can stand in the shade anywhere, so you are just exposed to the sun. And we saw the pyramids, we saw the working animals there that looked just like really, really, really bad. Um, and that's also a thing that I just have to mention. If you visit the pyramids, please do not accept the rides. They really don't care about their horses. The situation in the country is just like, it got so bad with the prices rising for day-to-day items that it became cheaper to buy a new horse instead of feeding it for 3 months. So feeding a horse for 3 months is more expensive than buying a new one. And unfortunately, this business is booming because the tourists are into, riding around the area on a horse or on a camel. But I mean, for those who have eyes, you will see that they are totally just, they work way too hard. They are not fed well. They are dehydrated. They are exposed to the sun all day long. Very, very malnourished. Very, sometimes you can see like open wounds everywhere and they don't really treat them. And so that's just a thing that I have to mention. If you want to see horses, please, maybe go and visit the Egypt Equine Aid Organization. It is an Australian charity it's basically a hospital for horses, but they also save horses from, these circumstances and treat them for free. And it's probably like the only place in Egypt where they have actual, like, real medical equipment for them. And we visited that place. It's absolutely beautiful. So definitely, please consider doing that instead of, keep feeding an industry that is really just horrible and very dark and very sad. Um, Yeah, I need to mention that because I mean, for those who have eyes, they can see, but please do not accept the rides. So we saw this in front of the pyramids, and then we went up to it to, take pictures and just feel the energy, and we would touch the limestone. And it had such an interesting effect because, I mean, as I said, it is a hot place, and we were exposed to the sun. And, I came from Switzerland, and when I left, it was still pretty cool around here. So my body was not used to the heat at all. And the first 2 days were, yeah, it was a little bit too much for me. But when we touched that limestone, it was almost as if we received some sort of a, almost like a reset of the whole, like I would say, nervous system. And it was like instantly grounding and also cooling. So that was very fascinating. We could like touch the limestone and we would feel cool instantly. So that was pretty impressive. And then we drove around the area, around Saqqara, where we were shown just many tombs and structures that lay there. But we didn't get to see everything because one day is just not enough. It's just too much to take in. But we knew that we would have to return when we visited this one place that is called the Serapeum or the Serapeum. It's an underground structure that they claim was a burial place, but it is just really, really fascinating. And also just the story of, saying that it is a burial place. I don't know, it feels a bit suspicious to me because if you see this in person, it just, to me, it does not make sense. Um, so we went down there and we were lucky, we were almost the only tourists. And we had that guide with us who, kept providing us a lot of information, and we really appreciated that. But when we were down there, we could just immediately feel that shift that would, I don't know, like put us in a state of almost like altered perception. It felt very serene in there, outerworldly, honestly. And so I asked our guide to just be silent for a moment, just to listen and take it in. And because there was no one else there, we could like feel and hear that silence. And it was very, very impressive place. So there were these just really gigantic sarcophagi that were within like within a little cave of the structure, and they are just extremely heavy. I don't even know how many tons. But it was also interesting that they were made of a different material than the rock in there itself. We saw like things like basalt, like granite. Um, and there was one made of limestone, but that wasn't there anymore. But there's one other rock that I can't remember right now. But these things are so large that no man has ever been like able to move them from where they are. They tried. They wanted to gift one of them to Queen Elizabeth, and they didn't really get very far. And the other thing is that they are way too big to even fit through the entrance there. So I wonder, like, how did they even get in there? Sorry, I might have to interrupt a couple of times because I'm sitting outside and people are working here with heavy machinery every once in a while, so I might have to pause and replay a couple of times. We'll see how it goes, but so yeah, that's it's a very, very mysterious place, and we continued down these hallways, and it felt so strange. Like you could feel the atmosphere being charged with some sort of electricity. I'll just let them drive by. Okay, sorry about that. So we continued down there, and there was this one sarcophagus where we were allowed to descend down to it. It was all the way in the end on the right side. It was a black one, and it looked just, all of them were just so impressive in the way of, their geometry as well, not just the material and how heavy they are and how big they are, but also just the intricacy of how they were made. And they looked like so precisely laser cut, and even the hieroglyphs on it were just, they look so clean, as if made with a laser of some sorts. And so we were down there, and that was when we started to perceive like a serious energy shift. And even our guide, he was the one who was constantly talking. He wasn't like very spiritually active or aware, but he was highly, highly interested. And he loved that we would, be empathic and intuitive. And he would also always ask us to, tell me what your visions are, what you perceive and stuff. And even he could tell like what is happening here, what is going on. The energy was just shifting, the temperature was shifting, it got hot, it felt very electrically charged all of a sudden, and almost like radiation of some sorts. And behind the sarcophagus there is this hole in the wall, and our guide told us to just sit in that hole and experience the energy, and again like share the visions or whatever we perceive. And me and Matt, we sat there one after the other for, maybe only a couple of seconds. And as we did that, it felt like the energy shift in this room started to change like even more drastically, to the point where it was really insane. And what I experienced in there was like within the first couple of seconds, I had like I guess a visitation, or like someone showing up in my mind's eye that looked, I would say, like it reminds me of the depiction that we have from the gray aliens. It had these large, large eyes, big, big skull, more wide than long. It was rather, yeah, it was wide, but it looked skinny, and the skin looked like leathery, and it was like, it was gray, but it also had like black patterns of some sorts. Like there was like something that looked like an outline of a nose that was black, and it had like black patches here. Yeah, it looked sort of leathery, and it only showed up for a split second on very, very like small neck, very thin. And that was all I saw. I didn't even see a full body. And it felt like a vortex or a portal in there. And I just sat there for a second, and afterwards Matt sat in for a second, and I was just checking out the sarcophagus, and how strangely enough, almost exactly opposite of the hole, there was some sort of an indentation, or some sort of an imperfection in the sarcophagus that just didn't make sense. Um, and the theory is that there must have been some sort of an accident as the thing was placed there, which to me does not make sense. I will try to edit a photo of it in here. It doesn't make sense to me because it still looks polished. It doesn't look broken, and even the hieroglyphs look perfect. So I wonder, to me it feels more like it was an impact of like strong, strong radiation of, or energy of some sorts. Um, and what I also perceived, just like being in there, is I also received almost like an overlay image of this place that looked like this place, but it felt like it is somewhere else and made of different materials. So I don't know if there is another place in another world that is very, very similar to this one with very similar structures. And one thing that I perceived that it was not for the dead. It was not really a burial. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The thing I perceived was beings, yes, being in there, not very alive, almost like in stasis maybe. But then it was like the whole room filled up with this, what looks like blue plasma, with these sparks. And my friend yesterday, he described it as neurons, which really resonates with me, just like in the air. And I wonder if it was a thing or a place to like actually teleport, because we returned to this area another day because we haven't seen everything, and we just wanted to experience that place again. And I entered one of these sarcophagi, one that was a little bit lower and a little bit easier to access. And I don't know what would have happened if we would have had a little bit more time and silence in there, but it felt like I was like ready to dematerialize. it was very, very strange feeling. Like I was just like stepping into somewhere else. So, yeah, I wonder. I don't know what the purpose of this place was, but I perceived just totally different things than burial. And what was also very impressive is we didn't spend so much time there the first day. We were like, I don't know, like 5 to 7 minutes. And as we returned back into the hallway, there was a guard waiting for us, and he was very, very angry with our guide. And he also like gave me the dead stare and was like asking Matt strange questions. And it turns out that spirituality is absolutely corrupted, especially there. It was impressive. So the thing or the problem was that they were asking us if we were meditating in there. Because if people do want to meditate or just like do anything energetically, then we have to pay extra. And that was really strange. So all of a sudden, we didn't feel safe anymore, and we just wanted to get the hell out of there. Um, yeah, and that's what we did. But I mean, that was a little shocking. And then we were wondering, like, this guard wasn't there when we arrived. I think he was in the entrance area, but all of a sudden he showed up, and I wonder how they noticed that there was something happening energetically. So I don't know, like we have theories about maybe them having psychic guards because we did not actually see any cameras in there. Or if they have some sort of devices set up that can sort of measure the energy shift and can like set off alarms when something happens. But that was strange. So we were not prepared for that. We were a little bit shocked. Um, yeah, and we actually also we really wanted to enter the pyramids, but they say that they are not open to tourists right now because they are under construction of some sorts, under restoration. And honestly, I did not believe that for 1 second, but especially now, after we realized that they are very afraid of what can happen when people tune in intuitively and how the energies can shift. And they want to keep this controlled because it's very impressive how many of the structures there truly react to what is happening around them and to who specifically is in there. It's almost like there's this sort of consciousness to the structure that allows it to sort of adapt to whatever intention or person or energy is within them. So that was really, really interesting. And so 2 days later, we returned to that place because this time we went with the host. He came with us as our guide that day. And he knows, how the business goes and how things work. And we really wanted to return to the Serapeum, but also just see the things that we haven't seen in Saqqara yet. And he did such an awesome job. Like he would provide us information and explanation, but only the like most basic things, and we could like ask questions, but he was not overstimulating us with information that at least wouldn't stick with me anyway. So really like that. And all the guards already know him because sometimes he would go there with the guests that he has. And there was this one, the stepped pyramid. We entered the stepped pyramid that day, and that was fascinating. That was absolutely just trippy to get in there. I have no idea how they call the structure that is in the center. um, I will again try to insert photos or even a video, but the energy was so intense that like even just upon stepping near it, I could almost like hear a sound. It was like a vibration, and it felt as if there was just this extremely strong beam that came off this structure in the base in the center that shoots up, and it's so strong. Like it was weird. I had this pressure on my ears that was all like And even our guide also said that, yeah, it's intense in there. And to me, like internally, it looked like a crazy bright beam of light, also like a vortex. And I tried to sort of stick my head into it as good as I could. And I started to perceive faces and like what feels like ancestors of the general region there. So I wonder if this is also a place where people could connect to their ancestors and maybe communicate with them. But I definitely felt like it was full of spirits inside that vortex or inside that beam or whatever it is. And again, like the consciousness and awareness and reaction of the structure of the material of the place itself was just very, very noticeable. It was crazy. And then he brought us to a place that is, it's also a tomb. And I don't remember the official name of it, but he says that like spiritually active or interested people call it the hospital because of very, very healing vibrations in there. I don't even know if I took any photos of this place. And again, we were very, very lucky. There was no one else beside us. And it's like, it's basically, it's almost opposite to the Serapeum. And so most people go in there and not in whatever they call the hospital. There was a structure above ground that reminded me a little bit of the way mosques are built. It was like the structure with an open ceiling, and then in the center there was not really a stairway, but it was like you could go underground, like step on stones, and beneath there was another tomb, and I don't remember who it was, but I sat down there just for, again, like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We just sat down and just were silent and open to perceive whatever we get from there. And within a couple of seconds, I could feel this just beautiful, cooling energy. It showed up as a bright light entering through my crown chakra and like flowing downwards, through my forehead and down my throat, into my chest, and basically through my whole body. And then it almost started to like split up and wrap itself around certain body parts, like one part was around the ankle, one part was on the left side of my head, and one part was like around a hand or something. And it felt really, really beautiful. And it's this type of cold that doesn't feel uncomfortable, doesn't feel painful at all. It was a very, very beautiful feeling. And in the next moment, I received what I believe was like a 360-degree view of the area outside. So it was definitely energetically very, very interesting. And after that, we went into the Serapeum a second time. And that was when I entered one of the sarcophagi. And what else happened there? I'm not even sure, but I remember like one very distinct thing that also the second time when we entered there, the energy in the air or the atmosphere or whatever came off the materials or the vortexes or portals really charged my hands in a way that was just, it was crazy. Like sometimes I do get these spontaneous hand activations, even if I'm not currently doing any energy work. But this was like crazy. It was almost painful. It was very, very electrical. I could even like touch Matt and touch the guide, and they could tell like there was this sort of very strange buzzing feeling that came off my hands, and it created this, I guess, force field that was just, yeah, very tangible, very interesting. And yeah, what else is there to this place to mention? It is really hard to describe because every time where, you get to a place that is so energetically charged or that is just a very intense like spiritual experience, sometimes I tend to forget parts of it. And so that's also a reason why I wanted to record this video, because I really don't want to forget what I experienced there, but it was a lot. and it was intense, and I'm very grateful for it. And so on that second day, when we returned to the house in the evening, we really loved to just hang around on the rooftop or the terrace, however you want to call it, where we had this beautiful view on the pyramids, and we had the fresh air and all of that, and we would just hang out or sometimes lay down on the carpet. And that's what we did, just like digesting the day, looking towards the sky, laying there. And that was when I believe we had some sort of ET contact experience. So I noticed this star that was behaving strangely. It was moving in a weird way, and I mentioned that to Matt. I was like, look at this star. Isn't it moving in like really strange ways? I wonder if it is a star or if it could be a ship or whatnot. And at first he didn't see it. He said that, sometimes we just have, like, it could be an optical illusion when you look at stars and they sort of seem to twitch and move a little bit. But it was just moving a little like too far off for it to just be an optical illusion. It did do this little dance in the sky. And then we started to tune in and just figure out, like, what is it? I was wondering, is it like a ship? Is it a Merkaba? I could sense a presence within it. Later on, I could perceive what I think were two beings, first one and then another one, but almost like there was a whole collective behind them as well. And I was just still trying to figure out, like, what are we looking at? What is happening here? And Matt was laying on my left side, and he was like, oh, this is another planet. Like, they are showing us another planet. And I was like, oh, what? And I wasn't able to perceive it like directly, but then I sort of tuned in around the corner, just like tuning into him and what he is perceiving. And then I began to see what he was shown. And it was this other just like dry, hot land that doesn't seem or feel terrestrial, and structures that looked actually rather simple, like these square shaped little stone structures that maybe these people live in. And he started to say that he can perceive a portal underneath it that is opening up. And I could not perceive the portal, but it was so strange because in a way we did experience the same thing. But on the other hand, we each had like our own individual experience separate from the other as well. And so we were just sort of bouncing off of each other what we perceive. And I started to perceive these, to me, they showed up as feline beings. At first I saw this, it looked like an orange cat, but like standing on two legs, standing upright. And then I feel like I perceived another one behind it, sort of. And I was just trying to communicate and ask why they are here, what they are doing here right now. And I couldn't really hear them, but I just perceived it visually. They were just like pointing at me and pointing downwards. And so I'm not sure what it means, but then I started to like theorize on either they are here to also do energy work and like try to heal the land and raise the frequency of the place in general, or they were actually like pointing at me to say, we are visiting you here right now. So I'm not sure about that, but it was really trippy. It was almost like when you have a psychedelic experience where you are sort of taken somewhere else and shown all these images and all these stories, but like hundreds of images within a couple of seconds, so many impressions. And I don't remember most of them. I do remember the hexagon that was very dominant, at least for a while, and I saw these like honeycombs structure. And I remember this one moment where, we would just comment on what we are perceiving in the moment to each other. And he was telling me something, and he was pretty close to me. He was like laying like maybe this distance, so we could like hear each other very well. But all of a sudden, his voice was just like, I could only hear it like very faintly, completely muffled, and as if he was like very far away. And I was unable to pay attention to him. And I had just like sort of a trip that was just like me and the star and whatever is happening there, and nothing else exists for a moment. Everything else sort of faded out in that strange way. And it was just a short moment. And then when I sort of snapped out of it, I could hear his voice very clearly again. Um, so I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but it felt like I was in like in a bubble, like in another reality. Um, so that was intense. And actually, like when I returned to Switzerland, I really wanted to try to find out what star or planet that we were looking at. And so I downloaded an app of a star map, and I was able to like orientate myself on the stars that we saw like right next to the pyramid. That was like we were facing west, and I could tell that there was Venus and the moon was like behind the pyramid. So I was able to orientate myself here as well, because I don't think that the sky is like, it doesn't look different than in Egypt here in Switzerland. And so I was sort of like tracing and remembering, and then I saw that star again. It's still there. So I don't think it was a ship. It's actually like a star that is there that just behaved very strangely in this moment. And I found out that it's Arctur or Arcturus, which is kind of interesting because I wasn't ever aware of being in contact with the Arcturians at all. Um, and I don't think that I would have like considered that if I didn't see that it is the star Arctur. So that's also interesting to note. Oh yeah, and what we also saw was just it wasn't only dancing around, but eventually it began to shoot off like these light beams in different directions, and we started to perceive like other little lights just very near to it, like appearing, disappearing, and like flashing around. So yeah, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And still, like I am open to the fact that it was just like an altered state of perception, like a meditative illusion, but it didn't feel like it. Like it felt very real. And I'm so glad that I wasn't alone with it, because usually when I see such things, most of the times when I'm with someone and I experience something like that, they don't even see it. They don't see it. So I feel like a freaking idiot. And I'm so grateful that Matt was there and he was like confirming and having his own personal experience with that as well. And since then, like, because I remember that as we were having the experience, I felt once again this cool energy coming over me, like over my body, wrapping itself around me in certain ways. And so I sort of have the idea that I received this energy earlier on in the day when we were sitting on this tomb that they call the hospital. Like, this is where it came in, and I believe that it came from the star. Not that I know, but like this is the connection that my mind sort of makes. And it does stay with me. So it seems like I can tune into it and then I begin to feel it again. And this is absolutely beautiful. I haven't experienced that ever before, and it feels like it is a thing that I received in this specific location. And I would say like the over the whole trip, we felt like we were just divinely guided and divinely protected, and we had like little miracles show up here and there. Like I remember that day when we went to the Red Sea, we did like one beach day. We drove out to the Red Sea at this like hotel area, and it rained. It rained that day, and like rain is something that is very rare in this region in Egypt. Well, maybe towards the sea more than in Cairo, but still, like it is special. And then I was just like enjoying the sea and swimming, and then we went inside that hotel for lunch, but we could see outside the window and dolphins showed up. It was like a group of 6 or 7 dolphins. And that was also like they rarely come near the beaches at all. So that was also just beautiful. And I was a little sad that they came like 10 minutes after I was in the water. That would have been like magical. But actually, like after the lunch, when we returned to the sea, we wanted to, go have a little swim again. Suddenly everything was full of jellyfish. And so we didn't really get in anymore. But that was a thing. And then another day we did a little bit of a museum tour. We went to the Citadel and we wanted to see different kinds of museums and also just the Egyptian museum. I guess it's just the historical museum, not the very new one, not the grand one, but the one before that. And we did not get in. So I don't know, like looking back on it, it almost feels like we were not meant to get in there. I did like my own little, if you want to call it like psychic research or whatever on why, and I did receive that there was something in there that could have like been very damaging energetically, so a very, very dark thing there. But it was crazy. Like we were paying for our tickets, and as I paid for my ticket, I just didn't receive it. And then I was like, okay, where's the ticket? And the lady insisted that she gave me the ticket, but she did not. And then a guy who also worked there, he was like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry, just let us check the security camera footage, and then we can see what happened." So they wouldn't just like give me the ticket and check the camera footage in the background and let us in the meantime. And it was like clearly a system failure because we were not the only ones. Like I was just the first one where this happened, but like many people were waiting for an hour. And I was a little like taken aback and just shocked about, how they actually treat visitors there. Like they are damaging their business by how they handle the situation in this very, very strange way that doesn't make any sense. But in the end, I truly believe that we were not supposed to go in there. Um, so I definitely feel like we were very protected and guided this whole time. Even the day when we went to visit that Egypt Equine Aid organization, we had it on Google Maps, but our host came with us and he didn't know the place, the driver didn't know the place, and I have never been in this region before anyway. And so it was kind of hard to find. There were no signs showing us the way. But for some reason, I knew. Like I ended up guiding them. I was like, we have to cross this bridge and then it's on the right side. It's over there. Like I could just feel it. And there's absolutely something to the fact of I guess it's the pyramids, but maybe also just like the general energy that is available overall there that absolutely enhances like psychic intention and energies. It was like crazy. So yeah, that was funny. Like I just knew where this place was, even though I was not familiar with it at all. Um, but yeah, I guess the thing that I found really strange about my whole impression of Egypt is that it's a weird mix of just like crazy magical high vibrational energy that feels like almost outerworldly, like unbelievable, but then also this heavy dense dark energy that feels like it comes from ancient times, and like curses or whatever have been released and demons that have been released because the tombs have been disrespected and opened up. And I think that, there were like all sorts of weird energies released when things were like buried up and opened up and exposed. And then also just like the people that seem to be just a little ignorant about, the way they live and that they could change it. Like they would have to change it on their own, but they are so stuck in that pride of, we have been doing these things the same way for thousands of years, but they are unwilling to open up their eyes and see and look at where it led them today, and that these ways are no longer helpful. But they are sort of stuck in that. And it's so weird how, to me the energies are like so enhanced and so, I would say, like enlightening almost. Like, how is it that people in the region are not all just fully enlightened and blissed out all the time and just like growing and expanding? And being abundant and vibrant the way they used to be, but they just refuse to evolve, unfortunately. But yeah, that was another thing that I noticed, that I wonder how this is possible. But I can also imagine that if you live in the region, then the energies might not have the same effect anymore because you're like, you know, used to it or something. So it's nothing special for them. But it seems like they are exposed to the energy, but it doesn't even get in. It doesn't even come through for them. So yeah, that is strange. Oh yeah, another thing that I noticed there, especially when we were in the Museum of Ancient Civilizations, they also have like all the mummies of the kings and queens in there. If you look at the artifacts and the statues and the things from like very, very early dynasties, like the first couple dynasties, the further back it goes, the more I feel like Atlantean energy coming through and like showing through. And they feel very different than the things that they have in the later dynasties, where it feels like it becomes more dense and more heavy. In the earlier dynasties, it really feels like life must have been very magical, um, and just less physical in a way. At least, like that's what I get. And so I guess it will still take a little time for me to really like decipher and decode all the experiences and impressions in Egypt. But for now, I just really want to ask, the people who tune in to that country, please just pray for the Egyptians. Send them love, send them good energy. Even the land, like this land needs so much love. So if you feel like it, just please pray. Pray for the people, the animals, the land there. It is so beautiful. Like I experience the people as very, very welcoming, very warm, very like to me even familiar. I had this strange effect of like the I would say the last 3 days suddenly I started to sort of understand the language, which is really interesting. And I do not speak Arab at all, like maybe two, three words that I know what they mean. But, as the locals are talking to each other, I don't understand at all. But then suddenly, like when I was aware of the context overall, I started to like understand sentences. And yeah, our host like even confirmed to me that yeah, that's exactly what we said. And I was like, whoa. Um, yeah, so who knows? Maybe I would pick up the language if I wanted to learn it, or maybe it's just the effect of sort of decoding the language in a way after having been there for a moment, because I can't say that I actually like understood in a way that I could replicate, but it's more of yeah, it's almost like decoding a language through I guess vibration and the voice, of the energy that of the person and what comes through. So that was a funny effect as well. Um, and yeah, I would say to summarize, it was a very, as I said, like emotionally, physically, energetically challenging time, but also just like very, very heart opening for me. Um, Usually I'm the sort of person who doesn't really like to open up emotionally and like especially cry in front of people or strangers or in public areas. And there, like, I had many triggers that just, I let down my guard and just like cried like a baby, and it felt so good. And it was beautiful. And yeah, if you think about maybe visiting Egypt, I would highly, highly recommend the Pyramids House. Currently, they are not really easy to find. I found them through booking.com, but then it was also like on one device this place showed up and on another device it didn't show up. But like if you're interested in experiencing the true, authentic, real Egypt, and especially like Cairo and the region there, then definitely like reach out to me, and I will get you in contact with the host of the Pyramids house. Yeah, or otherwise, just maybe try to support the local people who are trying to make a life for themselves, because the government is really just trying to get the poor people out and basically just not support their own people, and instead leave poor places to like, yeah, to just be destroyed, and just for people to be too poor to survive until they leave. Then they tear everything down to build like fancy touristic complexes that usually belong to rich Russians or Chinese people. But there are ways where, the tourists have it in their hand to actually support the locals. So yeah, I would say that's all that I can like remember to share right now. I hope you enjoyed, and please let me know if you have any questions. I was also thinking that, if people request it, and you are interested in like asking questions, specific questions about the trip and the experience, we could actually do a live Q&A on it if you like to. Let me know in the comments. And otherwise, yeah, take care of yourself. Much love, and see you in the next video.